Greetings, and it's a blessing. It's a real blessing to come back and engage with you in yet another Bible study. This time, I've chosen the theme from Matthew 20:25 to 28, which is the sort of memory verse for servant leadership, if I might call so. But don't worry about the leadership part of it. If you don't like leadership and things like that, we will still unpack this. So what I want to do is to try and unpack this whole "not so with you" command, as we call it, which is coming out in Matthew 20:25 to 28, quickly. So if you really study the teachings of Jesus Christ, it shouldn't surprise you, because Jesus Christ has made his upside down approach to different things in life pretty clearly, right? He has he said to have abundant life, you must be willing to die to self, right? To get life, you must die. He said, if you really want to punish your enemy, you got to really love your enemy, as he says in Matthew 5:43 to 44 and Romans 12:19 to 21. And again, if you go back about the need to die, if you need a reference, it is there in Matthew 16:25. And then he says to become rich, you should be able to willing to give everything away, right? Which is something that he has taught in Luke 6:38, as well as in Mark 12:41 to 44, where he talks about the story, the giving of the poor widow. So he is somebody who talked about turning things upside down. So it shouldn't surprise us that when he was asked, or when he needed to talk, when he needed to teach people about leadership, he really turned the pyramid upside down when it came to leadership also. But let's dig into that philosophy that he called in Matthew 20:25 to 28, and most of you know the NIV version reads it like this. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them and exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many." The central theme of this passage is "not so with you," which is what this command is known as. It is known as the "not so with you" command of Jesus Christ. So we're going to look into why did Jesus have to say or be explicit about this whole notion of "not so with you." Why did he have to tell that to his disciples and teach it in this way, "not so with you"? Now, when I studied this, when I unpacked this, what I found is that there are four tenets to this "not so with you" command. Tenet number one is power. Tenet number two is purpose. Tenet number three is values. And tenet number four is significance. Right? So again, power, purpose, values, and significance. So remember this as we go along. Now, ever since the fall, the natural wiring of every human being has been to use the powers that he or she has, that we have, to subdue and rule over others, right? And that I believe is the reason for that first tenet, where Jesus had to say, "Not so with you" about the use of power, right? Not so with you about the use of power. Now, if you might think about various powers that you have, but when we really look at the current scenario, we would find that people who have physical power tend to intimidate others. People who have positional powers is more, they use it most often to feel important. People who have intellectual power use it for ridiculing the people who do not know. Financial power is used to gain more wealth. Racial or societal power is used for gaining other types of power and to discriminate against the non-privileged or less privileged and things like that. So you would see that people are using power to gain things for themselves. They gain things for themselves. And people use power consciously. It is a conscious choice that they make. If you look into the story of Rehoboam given in 1 Kings chapter 12 as well as in 2 Chronicles chapter 10, this is a true testimony of how we as a human race tend to use power rather than choose to serve. Now Rehoboam's case is very interesting, right? Rehoboam made a very, very clear choice. All of you can read that, the story of Rehoboam right at the beginning of, the first Kings chapter 12. Now, he was given a very clear choice. The people came to him and told him in 1 Kings 12:4, the people came to him and told him, look, we are troubled and just lessen our burden and we will serve you. That was the promise that the people made. And then Rehoboam, when he took the advice of the people, the advisors even told him, look, in 12:7, in 1 Kings 12:7, the advisors tell him, look, if you will be servant to these people now, or if you will be servant to these people today and serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, they will be your servants forever. Right? So there was a clear benefit of being able to choose serving, so that the people would have been very loyal to him. The people would have been serving him for life, forever, as what the 1 Kings 12:7 says, right? But then what happened? We all know the ending. Rehoboam did not choose the serving piece. Rehoboam instead chose the power piece, and he said, look, I am the boss. I have power, and I'm going to use that power to trouble you even more, to extract even more from you, money or work or whatever it is. I am going to use that power and not going to serve you, right? Now, we can always analyze Rehoboam's choice and make him into a bad person, but if you really analyze, if you really study the history, you will find that there is plenty, legions, I could call it, of a company of people who had, and who are, and who will be making the same choice of as Rehoboam did, of using power to subdue and rule over others, of using power to subdue and rule over others. Yeah, whether you look at corporate history, political history, military history, economic history, whatever it is. And yes, even in church history, it's not been different. It has not been different. And Jesus, I'm sure, was thinking about the rulers, the long line of rulers and kings and prophets and judges and false prophets and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And when he said, not so with you, in using your power to subdue, to lord over others, to subdue others, right? And to exercise authority over others. And remember, Jesus did this knowing fully well that he had the powers, because John 13:3 tells us that Jesus, knowing that the Father had given him all things into his hands, that he had come from the Father, he had come from God and was going to God. Right? So as this verse tells us, he knew very well that he had the powers. I would urge all of us to pause for a moment and think about the powers that we have. Powers that come from being a parent, powers that come from being an elder sibling, power that come from being an elder in the church, power that come from being in committees in the church, power that comes from being the only earning member in the family, power that comes from being the caretaker of our old parents, power that comes from being a team lead or a manager in an organization, whatever, or power that comes from being rich, whatever, and examine how are we using those powers. How are we using those powers? Are we using it as Jesus asked us not to do? Or are we using it as Rehoboam chose to do? It's a good question for us to ponder. The second tenet of the Not So With You command is really the purpose. Purpose. What is the purpose that we are living for? What's the purpose that we are chasing in life? Right? Again, biblical history, church history, and world history will tell us that, or give us numerous examples of leaders who had very narrow purposes and personal purposes that sort of that sort of pursuing of only the self-interest of the leader, of the person who was in the leading chair, right? King Saul was so upset that David's popularity was becoming more than his popularity, and then all that he wanted to do was to eliminate David because of that, right? 1 Samuel 18:7-9, right? From there it starts, where Paul saw the people started comparing Saul with David and started praising David more, and then his anger grows, his jealousy grows. He thinks that he feels threatened by David, and all that he wants to do is to eliminate David and remove him from this world altogether. On the other hand, we see another man by the name Barnabas, right? Barnabas vouching, standing guarantee for a person who was persecuting and putting Christians in prison just few days earlier, right? Maybe a couple of months, I don't know, but just a little earlier, right? When Paul wanted to go to Jerusalem, the Bible says that the apostles were afraid, and it was Barnabas who actually stood guarantee for him, introduced him to the apostles, and then we know the story, right? And then of course Barnabas also goes in his accompanies Paul in his earlier missionary journeys, and then we see from Acts 26, Acts 9, 26 and 27 onwards, we see Barnabas watching for Paul and then going with him in his early missionary journeys, and then being happy to fade away in history, right? Letting God use Paul much more than what he had used Barnabas for. Let's examine ourselves again and ask this question: do we have a higher purpose in life? And are we willing to go to let go of our own self-interest, our own self-centered desires, our narrow purposes of gaining things for ourselves in life, and then pursue that higher purpose in life, in our ministry, and wherever we are, right? That's really another aspect, the second aspect of this Not So With You command. The third tenet of the Not So With You command is about values. Dr. Chris Wright, in his 2010 Lausanne address at Cape Town, he actually coined this term called HIS, his, and he was talking about his being an acronym for humility, integrity, and simplicity. Right? And he was asking Christian leaders, to imbibe these values, to walk these values, to walk these values, right? You would notice, despite the numerous places where we are asked to be humble, you see, our leaders are far from being humble. Our leaders are far from being humble, right? We see our leaders looking at their kingdoms, looking at their organizations, looking at their followers, looking at their palatial, houses or churches or whatever it is, and repeating after Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 4 verse 30 looks at Babylon and says that, look, is this not the great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? I, me, myself. And of course, if you read through chapter 4 of Daniel, we will know what happens to Nebuchadnezzar because of that pride. But that doesn't really frighten today's leaders, whether it is corporate leaders, whether it is political leaders or church leaders, right? People look at what we have created, the people whom I have mentored, the followers that I have, the things that I have built, and say, hey, look, is this not the kingdom that I have created for my mighty honor? When it comes to integrity, today's world is more like what the prophet Micah describes. Micah describes, in his talk to the Israelites in Micah 7:2-4. He says, "The faithful man has perished from the earth. There is no one upright among them. No one. They all lie in wait for blood. Every man hunts his brother, right, with a net, that they may successfully do evil with both hands. The prince or the ruler asks for gifts. The judge seeks bribe, and the great man utters his evil desire. So they scheme together. The best of them is like a briar. The most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge." Look at that. Look at our current scenario. Isn't that true? Is integrity as something that people go by, or is integrity something that people avoid? Right? You will notice that, yes, we live in a corrupt world, and integrity is a sort of an adjustable thing. We don't consider integrity as black and white. We say that, okay, a little bit of lack of integrity is okay, and then we just say that, okay, let's adjust, let us tolerate a little bit, and let us move on, right? In that spirit of tolerance and and adjusting, we live. But what is God's standard of integrity? That's reflected in Job's response, right? Job, when he is accused of being sinful, when he is accused of doing wrong, he defends himself, right? He defends himself by saying, "But for as long as I draw breath, and for as long as God breathes life into me, I refuse to say one word that is not true. I refuse to confess to any charge that is false. There is no way I will ever agree to your accusations. I will not deny my integrity, even if it costs my life. I am holding fast to my integrity and not loosening my grip. And believe me, I will never regret it." This is how the Message version of Job 27:3-6 reads. Job 27:3-6. It reads like that. It says, look, I am holding on to my integrity, and I'm not going to loosen my grip, and I'm never going to regret it, right? I will not deny my integrity, even if it costs my life, right? So where are we? Are we like Job, or are we like what Micah described? When it comes to simplicity, we come across many people, many leaders who are never satisfied with what they have, who do not know what contentment means, and hence looking for ways to show off rather than showcase the good work of Jesus Christ. Where are we? Are we walking the values and being His HIS? Humility, integrity, simplicity. And lastly, the fourth tenet of Not So With You is significance. Today's world actually celebrates success. Today's world encourages success. We keep hearing these messages, be successful, go and be successful, and stuff like that. And you may think that there's nothing wrong with being successful, but there is. When success is measured by what one has gained for oneself, knowledge, money, position, power, title, status, number of followers, number of likes, whatever it is. If success is measured by what one gains, number of records that is broken or whatever it is, it becomes self-centered. The bigger question that one needs to ask is, how has that success translated into benefit for others? How have you added value by being successful to others? In other words, and if you have a good answer to that question, we are leading a life of what I call significance. So significance is when people who lead a life of significance is when somebody when you acquire things so that you can add value to others. You acquire knowledge so that you can help the unlearned. You acquire wealth so that you can help the poor. You get healthy so that you can take care of the sick. You gain wisdom so that you can take care. You can help the foolish, etc., etc., etc. Everything that you have is meant for others and not for you. You know, it's interesting. Much is written about the spiritual gifts that is described in 1 Corinthians 12, 4-11. All of us must have read about it at some point in time. 1 Corinthians 12, 4-11. But there is one central verse in that, 1 Corinthians 12, 7. Go and read that. That's actually sort of placed right in the center of this description about the spiritual gifts. And it says like this: but the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. And to me, that's the operative part, right? The gifts are described and the gifts are the manifestation of the Spirit. But the Bible very clearly says that the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all, not for the profit of the one who received that gift. No. It is meant for others. Every gift that we have is meant for others. Everything that we gain is meant for others. So if you're chasing success and gaining things, if you do not use it for others, you are not profiting others. You're not profiting all. And so you're not using your gifts properly. So we got to ask this question, right? What have I gained today, and what have I added? What value have I added to others with it? So next time when you read this passage, Matthew 20, 25-28, let's focus on the "Not so with you" command of Jesus Christ and correct our ways. Correct our ways. Not so with you in the usage of power. Not so with you in our self-centered life purpose. Not so with you in not living according to the biblical values of His. Not so with you in chasing success, but pursuing significance. I wish we have understood, I hope and pray that we have understood the meaning of "not so with you," and we will live and listen to the Lord when He says, "My son, my daughter, not so with you." Thank you.